Mayor Miller, thank you for joining us for this segment, Ask Mayor Miller. We wanted to talk with you first about the garbage situation. We're still getting calls, and I know commissioners are getting calls. Most recent call I had was from a condo unit that had an agreement with the prior contractor, and now with the change, what kind of problems are still out there? I know you opened up the convenience center for people to take their cans, but not everybody can. So what is the status of the transition?
Well, we'll be providing an update very soon, but for right now I can tell you that the number of calls and complaints that we got, they've decreased. We were getting probably 2,000 a week, and now we're getting less than 100 a week. So I can say that getting Riley involved and getting them taken care of since January, things have worked a lot more smoother than before. The problem we're getting now is not directly related to anything they're doing. Most of the complaints we get are situations like maybe the apartment complex had a private contract with the former waste management company had their contract, and they may have stopped it because it was residential, realizing they billed them separately and they mistakenly cut their service off, and Bibb County doesn't provide that service or a pass-through service or collect any of their monies. So we have had a couple of those pop up where people just assume that it's the county's issue and it has something to do with our transition, but really it was the third-party company disconnecting the service improperly with that particular community or apartment complex and not servicing. Now they're getting back on that. But the most common problem has been the green trash cans. We don't own those cans, and I've said it day in and day out for a long time, is Macon-Bibb County does not own those cans. Therefore, it's not our responsibility to remove those cans, and we have given them an opportunity to remove those over a period of time, and certainly not happen as quick as we like to. We'll be making an announcement on that probably within the next 24 hours on that. But the bottom line is that their cans are supposed to remove them. It started back when we had the red cans delivered. Waste Management would not empty red cans. So we had hoped to have the red cans placed there and to pick up the green cans when we started this process right after Thanksgiving last year. But because they refused to pick up the cans of their competitors, maybe for liability reasons or other reasons, it put a month behind on the transition process between the red and the green cans. So therefore we could not wait until January the 1st came along for Ryland to take over all the community, still having to deliver some red carts out and some blue carts out. The other thing is we received an incomplete list from the previous company. So Ryland was handed a list of all the residents, all the parcels that was incomplete. Not pointing the finger at anyone in particular, but when you have a list that says you're going to distribute these locations, this amount of cans, and that's what you had to work off of, they delivered all the cans that they were supposed to deliver, and the bottom line is that that list was inaccurate. So we had to get a better list. What happens is, between the county and the waste management companies over the last several years, it would flip-flop between who's responsible for the secret fix, who delivers the cans, who picks them up. And I suspect after the initial delivery the last time, no one updated the list when all the folks started asking for other cans or maybe got a separate can or got recycling. So the list wasn't accurate. They would go to your house because they had your address, but your neighbor may not necessarily be a recycler or something on that list, and they didn't drop one off to you. Doesn't mean they skipped the whole street or you in particular. They're just going by a parcel that they had an address for, and that's how the company got paid. Again, Macon-Bibb County's not putting those red carts out, not putting the blue carts out. A third party was contracted to do that service. So it's not Ryland not bringing you a can or skipping you out. It's not Macon-Bibb County not doing that. They're relying on a list they had, and they're doing their job and they're completing their list. The list just happens to be inaccurate, and we're working through those difficulties. We want to make sure everybody gets a red can first as much as possible. And then the blue cans, for those that don't have it, they'll begin to start working through the secret fix list very soon.
Last time I went by the mall, there didn't seem to be many red cans left. So do we have to order more?
We've ordered them in stages, so there are more red cans coming in. One example may be, say for instance, we got a list from the previous company that says you have a one parcel that's designated as ABC Lane. It didn't say that there was 4 duplexes on there. So you account for 1 trash can for a parcel when there may be 4 to 8 on there. We ordered extra in the very beginning, and we got a drop ship really quickly, and then we started getting others in as they come available. So we'll have all the red cans out. We're hoping to have those out by January, but we have most of those out. But some people pay for 2 and 3 cans. That's the other thing. We have a couple thousand people in Macon who pay for 3 cans at their home or their residence where they may reside at, and they pay that money per can, and some only receive 1 can when they're paying for 2 or 3. So that creates a number that we need to order. We've ordered those. Those have began to come in. The blue cans were extra recycling that we had because we realized the list that we had were in the very beginning were incomplete. A lot of recycling people added on after a period of time, and they never updated the list. So we do know that we're going to work through the secret fix to get those blue cans out. What we told everybody is that if you only have a green can and you have no red can delivered to you, then they will still pick up the trash in that green can. What we try to discourage people, and despite our best efforts to get the word out, I still see people putting trash in the red and the green cans side by side. And at some point that has to stop. We are paying the trash company based on a can and an average collection amount of pound per month or per week. And we can't continue to ask them to absorb all the costs of picking up double and triple the amount of trash at these locations.
Now, recently you and a delegation of local leaders traveled to Alabama to take a look at Huntsvilles amphitheater that was built on the site of an abandoned shopping mall. What did you learn on that trip that can be helpful for your plans to build a 10,000 capacity amphitheater at the Macon Mall?
Well, it's very valuable to go to Huntsville in general, not just only because of amphitheater, because they have seen tremendous growth in that area through aeronautical, through space, through security. Those types of things we can learn as well. And also, at the time that we decided we were going to do the Macon Mall development there, we really didn't know about Huntsville and how they had utilized a particular area of their mall. They tore down the mall there. That one site they have, and they've secured about another 40 acres around there, about 120 to 140 acres. Not only do they have an amphitheater there, they have a Top Golf, they have a Dave & Buster's, they have a Trader Joe's. It's really growing there. In that area. But some of the things we learned is that in the building process, it was important for us because we're beginning to finalize the details on selecting a contractor and an architect for our product that we're going to have here. And we certainly still hope to have a groundbreaking in this month, in February, upcoming month. But one of the things we learned is ingress and egress is important. Security is important. The back of the house is important. You know, we all see the nice things out front, but really to attract that entertainer to that venue, you have to meet their needs in the back of the house. The certain size of the green rooms, the fact that they may need a kitchen or a patio there. They like to have commercial washers and dryers to wash their clothes there, or other materials that you don't really think about when you think about booking a band. And also the relationship on how you select someone that's going to book the venues for you, and how much of that should be community, how much should be generating financial reward. We also learned about their expectations on cost as far as things are going to cost for that site to compare to ours, and how much to expect revenue to come in. We looked at some of their impact statements that they have on revenue and how it impacts the community. So it gave us a broad area to look at, not just the amphitheater, like I said, but their entire community on how to build a better relationship and how to design things. It was well worth the trip. I'm glad we did it while it was still in progress to see. They won't be opening up until May. They probably got about 100 days before they're open that venue there, and we want to see it from from where they started at and to where they're going to finish at. So it gives us some things to do to make sure we don't make those same mistakes, to live and learn from the lessons that they've had during this process. So we're very excited about it. It's certainly going to happen. I think ours is probably somewhere closer to 11,000 capacity as opposed to the 10 that we started out with. And we're very excited in the next several weeks to start rolling out the next plan and finishing the process that we started. But we're certainly going to break ground in February this year.
And you signed a memorandum of understanding with Georgia Mobility that has an interest in developing a personal rapid transit network of gondolas that would loop between downtown and out to the mall and such. Do you think that there's really a feasibility for something like that in the future with your plans for the amphitheater?
Well, it's certainly something that I think we can't rule out. We don't want to get people excited about the Jetsons and all of a sudden going from one location to the other, but there's some technology that exists in the world, and they've had it at a couple of places, and I think Macon would be certainly a great market for that. We looked at downtown Mercer. We looked at joining the Macon Mall to your downtown corridor. Certainly wouldn't bear any cost for ourselves or Macon-Bibb County, but there's a company who has the capabilities of doing that, and you have to migrate all those things with GDOT and certainly security issues and licenses and things of that nature. But it's kind of like a rail, but it's in the air. If you go to Disney World, you'll see that, kind of that concept. I know they've had them on some cruise ships. And I know at least one place in the United States and a couple of places outside of the United States, they've had these same pods where you get in there and you go on a rail in the air to your next location, and it will drop you down. It may be something of the future. It doesn't cost us any money to look at it, and certainly if they're willing to spend the money to develop a small section of our community, it could be a great attraction for Macon-Bibb County as well.
And of course, the Urban Development Authority is moving forward with kind of plotting out potential pickleball courts in the old Belks location, and the transit authorities on notice that county employees are going to be moving out of Terminal Station. So how are plans developing for what you see the mall becoming?
I think we're off to a great start. We have, in the process, we did an RFP for designers for design and build for 36 pickleball courts at the former Belt Matthews to see if it's going to be feasible there and what the cost would be associated with that. We've already met with some national organizations to look at the economic impact that you'll have, because it'll bring 800 to 1,000 people in at a time over a 4 or 5 day period of time if you host a national event. But to do so, you got to have the certain amount of courts, the quality of that court, the height, and the amenities that go along with it. So we're very excited about that. It could be a huge economic impact. It's also going to be a 365. It'll be rain or shine event. And that's something that we can guarantee someone, that you don't have to worry about lightning, you don't have to worry about rain. It can be cold, it can be hot. It can be a very attractive venue that probably nowhere in the United States could build a venue like this. And but for our special circumstances with having this gift at the mall, it's something that is probably wouldn't be affordable from the ground up if you had to build it. Moving the offices is something that we're steadily working on. We have a couple of new announcements of some new offices that will be locating there. We'll talk about those in the very near future, and I think something that's going to that the community on the West Macon side, Southwest Bibb County, going to certainly like. There's a couple of things they lost in the past that we're going to bring back. I think it's going to be an asset to our community all across the board, and we're looking forward to that area growing a lot in the next 12 to 18 months. I've already met with the Presidential Parkway owner. We've been discussing on the telephone plans to redevelop that area there. They purchased that in the recent months. He'll be traveling to Macon, and we're going to go through and meet the people he needs to meet here. We've got some very good, aggressive, out-of-the-box ideas for that community there, some retail, some other. And I'm looking forward to working with them. They're managed shopping centers similar to this all across the United States. And I think they're going to have that credibility and that reputation that they can bring some retail to that area that's going to help the entire area. So we're very excited about that.
So what you're talking about there is that section on Presidential Parkway, let's say where the old Target was and such. So there's a new owner for that will bring potential future development as we move
There's
forward.
a new owner there, and we're looking at that whole corridor. We've also got some GDOT things that'll be going on Eisenhower Parkway to make that more traffic friendly, more pedestrian friendly as well, safer for the community over there. And we're also got a gateway project that we're going to kick off here. We've talked about that last year. We put money in the budget for it. 2 or 3 of our gateways have been approved by GDOT, and we are already in the process of selecting the people that's going to plan it, which has to be done before March. And then our long-term commitment to maintain that through a third party to make sure our gateways entering our community are clean, upkept, and they look beautiful when you come in and they're inviting.
Well, speaking of a gateway, there's been some rumblings from the historic preservation community about the demolition of the old gatehouses at Central City Park. I know that there's a plan to enhance the ball fields and to replace those, but I think some leaders thought that they were going to be restored as part of the Carolyn Creighton Park improvements, and I know you want to get the softball tournaments back. So can you tell us what's going on and why those gatehouses couldn't be saved?
They were just in too bad disrepair. The folks that looked at it, they're really not salvageable. The roof had caved in, some of the brick is very brittle, and of course that venue has expanded throughout the operation, and it's important to have the certain width and certain height of the rides and things that come in there as we continue to grow. I understand it's old, doesn't necessarily mean historical. If it is, we have a lot of historical people in Macon, right? So it's the third or fourth building that's been at that location. We went back and looked at the history. Certainly, I was not aware that people were not talking back and forth when that project decided to move forward. I don't think that we necessarily owe everybody in Macon-Bibb County to tell them we're going to remove a structure of our own property on our own locations that we have, but certainly I hadn't heard anybody, nobody had contacted me about helping out or doing any of that work there. We try to preserve any time as possible. As a matter of fact, Ethiopia, Arlington, when we have our blight list, if there's a particular structure and we send them a copy of our list that is something that needs to be protected, that has very historical significance, we remove it from our blight list. We try to work and be a good partner to make sure that we restore what we can. My understanding from these particular properties, it was very cost prohibitive, number one, but not very much was salvageable. And like I said, it's been 3 or 4 different entrances in that park since the early 1900s. So I didn't see necessarily the big historical significance of that. We do plan on reaching out to them as well as members of the community to help in the design process. So that's going to be consistent with our other. And of course, we have a new name. It's Carolyn Creighton Park now. And I think we still need to have some signature there on that and make sure it's consistent with the other parks that we have. So, you know, we apologize if anyone got offended by the tearing that down. It's not one of those things that we did in darkness. We assumed that people knew because it's falling down because they complained about it. You know, it was a dangerous structure, and I was worried that someone was going to get harmed or hurt there. Of course, we do have the cherry blossom coming up, and although we may not have them rebuild by that particular time, we didn't want to have to navigate around that dangerous structure there at a time that we needed to. And we're trying to make over the whole park. That includes some lighting that we're going to add there. Certainly, we found out what some of the drainage issues there, and that's going to be addressed. And the ball fields, outside of being an economic impact on Macon-Bibb County, we're going to make sure they're consistent and they complement the other things that we have and facilities we have in Macon, and they can also generate some money. So we're very excited about all the things that's going on there. We'll continue to work with our partners in the Historical Society and do what we think is best. And perhaps we can learn a lesson is that we have to be better communicators, and it's a two-way street. And I talked to Mr. Garlington. I said, hey, if you had a plan for it, reach out to us. You could drive by there just like I do, and you see the conditions are there. A simple phone call, email ahead of time to say, what can we do to save this structure that made it to my desk would have certainly been helpful. But we're just trying to make all the best improvements we can for that park and give it its proper attention to it. And like I said, we were not aware of any historical significance of that other than just being the interest to that park of that importance. Because we have seen pictures of at least 3 or 4 entrances where that's been remade several times, and one of them was because of a fire.
Now, you've had a year in office now since we've last sat down. I understand, too, there's a lot of appointments and reappointments coming up to the various boards and governing authorities, the commissions and such that are ancillary to the Macon-Bibb County government. So what is your process for going through and evaluating who might need to be replaced and just the new people you're bringing in? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. We'll get back to where during our transition team, you know, we had a very unique transition team that I believe represented a cross-section of all citizens of Macon-Bibb County. I want to encourage people to get involved, and I want the diversity on our boards to be similar to what it is in our community. So we've been intentional about that, and our boards are the same way. There are some boards where it really takes several years to get trained and to stay on that board, and therefore they have kind of term limits. So when these positions come up, number one, we go to the people that are running these boards and indicate this particular person is coming up for renewal in the next couple of months. Is this person that you think continues to add to the board? Do they show up to the meetings? Do they provide input? Do we need a change there? Sometimes they automatically have to roll off the board. In those instances where people no longer want to serve on the board or they have missed several meetings, we start looking. I first of all always reach out to my commissioners and say, this particular board is coming up. If you have suggestions, please nominate someone that I can consider, do further research on. And then I depend on my team. Some of my transition teams, we reach out to them. Leadership Macon, we reach out to them. And of course, our own staff and the community members that we work with. We want everybody to have a fair shake, so we have a good, diverse group of leaders that come on these boards. At the same time, we just don't want to fill seats. We want people to get engaged and actually do the work. There are some boards I think are on a bigger hierarchy than others. When I think of those, I think of somewhere like the Industrial Authority. Industrial Authority is a prime position that deals with a lot of economic development in Macon, but it also deals with workforce development. And if you look at one of my recommendations for the board that we're recommending on tomorrow, I'm going to be recommending that we fill Nikki Randall's seat with Cassandra Washington. I think if you really want to talk about having an educated and a quality workforce, what better person to go to is someone at the school system that runs a college and career academy. So Cassandra is a excellent member that I met at the school board. I watched her on a daily basis, see what she does, what she brings to the community. She was on my transition team. She knows what workforce development is, and I think she'd be a valuable asset to that. Instead of just having the same old, maybe businessmen that you generally have on that board. And certainly I want to make sure that African-American female was represented on that board, especially after Nikki Randall is no longer going to be on there. So we look at those things. Urban Development Authority is another one of those top boards that you have to, you can't just pull out of a hat and say next person up. It requires a certain, skill set that you bring. I think about Jim Crisp. I put him on the board this past year. And the reason I did that is because I knew that his skill set in dealing with theater and being involved in Macon and LBGT and the whole gamut. I think with the amphitheater coming out, he would be that person that can look at that and say, this is theater, this is music, this is a good perspective. So, and he certainly knows what's going on downtown as well, and he's connected to the community. He's been doing it a long time. So those are the type of things that goes behind my decisions. We want to make sure people are the right fit for that particular board. And we try to accommodate as much as possible, but some boards are more popular than others, and certainly another one comes to mind is planning and zoning. You want to make sure that people understand what planning and zoning is, and they understand how that all works together in a total plan for Macon-Bibb County. So when those boards come up, they're prime board appointments that we have to really take a deep dive into. And then, like I said, we always want to get commissioner input anytime we can, and certainly they have to approve most of these boards as well.
We've talked a lot about the economic development on the West End and such, but now a year in, how do you stand on some of your other key initiatives, such as battling homelessness and crime?
Well, we'll take the homelessness first. We've just been awarded the State Visionary Award for the cities in Georgia, over 400 cities, and we were awarded the top award. That was largely in part of how our community came together in a collaborative effort to take care of our most vulnerable at Brookdale. We're very pleased with that. We're starting to get a lot of national attention on that, on how do you do that, and how do you bring this together in such a short time. We want to build on that, and we're going to continue to do so. We have 41 children still out there now. Housing first is our motto there, and we're going to continue to make sure that that's going to be our ultimate goal. It's not the end all for everything, so we have to work with our partners that we're continuing to do behind the scenes with the Homeless Coalition and other important members that we have here to tackle that issue. It's something that we're always going to have. But right now we're looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. Where can we make our biggest impact as soon as possible? But at the same time, we're going to have to get professionals, professionals from Atrium, professionals from Navicent, from Piedmont, from River's Edge, all the professionals that we have in that area. They're going to have to be a seat at the table for these chronic problems that we have. Unfortunately, Middle Georgia and Macon-Bibb County do not have the resources, the staff, or the facilities to address that issue. We like to think we do, but honestly, we do not have any of those above. And that's something it's probably 20 to 30% of the ones that we have, but it's certainly a need that we have to have in our community. As far as the crime is concerned, it's one of those, it's a tough subject to discuss. It's one of those things that does keep me up at night. I get the call in the middle of the night, I get the call in the morning, I get the text in the morning. Certainly, I get the pushback on the community from media updates. I think one of the things that we have is people get these updates all the time on notifications from different media sources. So they always think there's a problem. But if they got updates from other communities, I think they would have the same problem. We went back and looked at some numbers, and it was interesting to me, if I'm correct, I think in 2019 we had 25 homicides. 2020 we had 51. And we had 54 if you want to count the homicides in 2021. So you go from 25 to 51 to 54 in that period of time. You think about, what are the biggest reasons for this? Is Macon that bad? Is it something that we're doing here that causes that issue? But you think about what happened during that period of time. And I've read some materials on this and some articles on that, and it became very eye-opening to me. So you take away the two biggest organizations that help youth, that help with problems, that help us as individuals and grow. And you think about the faith base. So you think about the churches and the counselors and the family network you have there, and you think about the school systems with the counselors and the fact that we have your children for several hours a day making an impact on them. And what are the two biggest organizations that shut down during the pandemic? It's no secret that because you shut those places down for better or worse, it's having an impact. You don't just have that kind of a jump. So I think that's part of the situation that we have and trying to figure that out. I'll go one further. If you go back and look at the months that these incidents happen at the higher number, before 2019 and before, it was probably the summer months. Kids are out of school, people doing different things, not a whole lot of activity going on. That's usually our highest violent crime months. You take the pandemic and it was like March, April, May, when you're supposed to be in school. And another thing, jumping, not to be political, but you look at the Ferguson effect. When we went to all those neighborhood meetings, from town hall to town hall, discussing crime, and a lot of those were in impoverished areas, predominantly minority areas, what they were telling us is we want more of a police presence. We need more police. We want more security. But if you're talking to the authorities, in their mind they're saying, we can't over-police. We can't be there all the time. We can't look like we're targeting this area. So they're real hesitant about providing, I think, the policing that's needed in some neighborhoods, not over-policing. So I think we're going to have to strike a perfect balance with that. I think we got away from that a little bit, from worrying about a police presence and trying to navigate all the things that was going on in the national. Now our sheriff has done a good job about that, and he has a good relationship with those in the community. But if you take those two things and you add them together, you get the 50 number we're getting. But I will say, if you continue to look around our neighbors to the left and to the right, their numbers are up dramatically already this year as well. So it's nothing unique to Macon-Bibb County. Our MVP program that we're starting, it's going to be beginning, that you'll see in the next couple of weeks starting to roll out. It's going to address those root causes. We're going to have the technology necessary. Our $40 million incentive program has already shown success between who retired last year and who is still working with us now. We've seen that number decrease on the amount of turnover that quickly. We have hired part-time officers, more part-time officers than we've ever been able to hire in all of our history that I'm aware of. And that's an initiative that we've got out there. Our community foundation is going to step up and start administering these community grant solutions that we talked about through our meetings. And we'll present that guideline and those dates coming up at our February 15th meeting. And then we have our crime interrupters that we're going to be awarding some contracts to, our shot spotter through the technology. All those things are just now coming on board. You have to remember that I'm still just 6 months into my budget as the new mayor. And people talk about a year, but really July 1st was my first budget cycle where I could put my money, our priorities together with your tax dollars to the best use that we could have. Even though I came in mid-year and we made some adjustments, we're only 6 months into this process. Behind the scenes, I can see results already through our mental health matters and other things that maybe hasn't translated to a number yet that people like to measure us by. So we still have a lot of work to do, but I'm confident that we have all the right pieces of the puzzle together. We're moving in the right direction. It's not as quick as we all like for it to happen, but I just have to remind people this is not unique to Macon-Bibb County. It's a national problem that we have. When the national rate's up 30% and Bibb County is only up 5.8% in violent crime, that's a small win. Macon-Bibb County's crime rate overall last year was down 10% as a whole. You're never going to believe it by getting your notifications on your phone and always the negative stuff. But that's the truth, that we're down about 10% on overall crime. Violent crime is up 5.88%, the last number that I saw anyway. But nationally, it's up a lot more. As a matter of fact, we often compare ourselves to Columbus. Columbus went from 38 homicides to about 64 in 1 year, this last year. While we went up 5.8%, they went from 38 to 64. So I think we're doing some things right, and we're addressing the blight and the homeless and getting the police hired and retained. It's just going to be a process that we got to attack those root causes to get mental health, and there's no silver bullet.
Anything you want to add about what's on the horizon?
Not that I can see.
All right, thank you, Mayor, for your time.